Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. I want you to imagine this for a moment. You're lying beside her in bed, the dim glow of the bedside lamp tracing the curve of her face, and everything seems familiar, except it isn't. Suddenly, she's doing things differently, movements she never did before, a certain confidence and adventurous edge, subtle skills that seem to come from nowhere, and you can't help but wonder, where did she learn that? It's thrilling on one hand, but there's that creeping feeling that something doesn't quite fit, that maybe these new bedroom skills aren't about you at all. Maybe they're evidence of a story unfolding elsewhere, a story you haven't been invited to participate in. This isn't just about sex. This is about trust, intimacy, the fabric of your relationship itself. How do we know when something beautiful is genuine and when it's masking betrayal? How do we sit with that discomfort without immediately jumping to conclusions and yet honor that gut feeling that tells us something may be off? Today we're going to explore this sensitive terrain together. We'll look at how to read the subtle signs when a partner suddenly changes in the bedroom, what it might mean, and what you need to ask yourself before confronting the truth. So lean in, this conversation is going to challenge you. Not just to look at her behavior, but to examine your own heart, your fears, and your capacity for honest dialogue. You know, it's fascinating how the bedroom can become a stage where not just desire plays out, but our deepest insecurities too. When we feel love, we often relax into a rhythm, a shared dance of connection that feels safe, predictable, maybe even a little repetitive over time, and then all of a sudden that rhythm changes. She starts moving differently, touching you in ways she never used to. Her confidence grows, almost overnight, and what once felt intimate now feels like a performance. What you do in that moment, do you lean into it and enjoy the novelty? Or do you start questioning where she learned these new moves? You see, when a woman suddenly learns new bedroom skills, it can stir something deep inside you, a swirl of curiosity, excitement, suspicion, even jealousy. And these emotions don't just come from nowhere. They come from our longing for security, for certainty in love, and our fear of betrayal. Let's pause here. Why is this important for you as a man? Because trust is the glue that holds intimacy together. When trust begins to wobble, even small changes can feel seismic. But here's the truth. Not every change means she's cheating. Some women discover themselves in private ways, reading, watching, exploring within, and they might want to bring that newfound confidence into your shared space. And yet there are times when those new skills do carry the imprint of another's touch. So today we're going to explore this complex emotional terrain carefully, and I want to begin with this question for you. What exactly changed? What was the first moment when you felt this shift? You have to get very clear on that. Sometimes it starts with subtle new techniques. Something about how she kisses you, how she holds your face longer, how she directs the pace differently. Maybe she begins introducing new positions or seems to know exactly what buttons to press to heighten your arousal. These aren't just minor curiosities. They're skills that need learning and practice. Let's talk about the first indicator. Sudden expertise in oral pleasure that feels advanced or entirely different from her previous style. Maybe before she was timid or reserved, and now there's this ease, this artistry. You can't help but wonder where she learned that finesse, because it doesn't feel like a gradual evolution, it feels like a leap. This shift can trigger deep discomfort, and while it could come from experimentation, from her own private curiosity, it could also mean she's learned from direct, embodied experience with someone else. What matters here is that you don't react impulsively. Instead, slow down, observe not just the act itself, but her energy, her enthusiasm, her gaze. Is she offering these skills as a gift, wanting to deepen your connection, or does it feel like her mind is somewhere else while her body performs? The second indicator is when she starts taking control more assertively, almost as if she's been newly awakened to what's possible, but with a confidence that seems rehearsed. Before, you may have led the dynamic. Now she's calling the shots, flipping the script, choosing the pace, dictating positions. While that can be incredibly exciting, it's also a marked departure from who she used to be. This kind of sudden shift may signal that she's been playing the script somewhere else, rehearsing with someone else. Again, we're not saying this proves she's cheating, but when someone suddenly embodies a new sexual script with confidence, you have to ask yourself, has this confidence come from internal exploration or external experience? Then there's the third indicator, a surprising comfort with sexual experimentation that wasn't there before. Perhaps she's suggesting toys, introducing dirty talk, or even exploring fantasies that she had once resisted or seemed shy about. And yes, sometimes women blossom and become freer because they feel safer, more comfortable in themselves and their relationship. But if these changes seem abrupt and uncharacteristic, they can leave you wondering, has someone else unlocked this freedom in her? These three indicators can cause a cascade of questions within you. And I want you to understand that this is not about blaming or shaming her. It's about listening deeply to the shift in your connection. You must observe not only what she's doing, but how you're feeling in response. Are you shutting down? Are you pulling away emotionally, mistrusting her before you even have a conversation? Are you so distracted by suspicion that you can no longer enjoy what she's offering? This is why it's crucial to stay present with your emotions, even the uncomfortable ones. To recognize that jealousy is a signal, it doesn't necessarily mean guilt, but it does mean something in your bond requires attention. As we explore these signals, I also want you to reflect on this. Have you created space for her to express her evolving desires and curiosities with you? Sometimes women seek novelty and passion elsewhere, not because they want to leave, but because they don't feel free to explore those things within the relationship. Have you encouraged her to feel adventurous with you? Have you communicated openly about desires? Because if not, that emotional distance may explain why her newfound freedom feels foreign, and that's worth reflecting on before drawing conclusions. Now you may be sitting there heart pounding a little, recognizing these signs in your own experience. Maybe you're replaying memories in your mind, thinking, when did it start? That new kiss, that new position, that shift in confidence. And that's okay. These questions matter. They give you insight into your relationship's health. But they're not the end of the story. They're the beginning of a deeper conversation. So stay with me, because there's more to uncover here. There are more layers to this shift in dynamic, more intimate details that might reveal what's really going on behind closed doors. When we start noticing these subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, changes in the bedroom, the natural instinct is to focus all our attention on her. Where did she learn that? Who taught her? But here's the thing about intimate relationships. When something shifts in one person, it always reveals something about the dynamic between both partners. The question you may need to ask yourself is, what is happening in the space between us that would allow or invite these changes to feel so surprising? Let's linger for a moment on this idea of the space between. The bedroom is not a vacuum. It's a mirror reflecting the state of your emotional connection. If you feel alienated or shocked by her new behaviors, it may be that emotional distance crept in long before you noticed physical differences. Perhaps she's exploring new ways of expressing herself sexually because she's yearning for more excitement, more curiosity, more aliveness, and didn't feel able to ask for that directly. But sometimes these new skills really do come from experiences outside the relationship, and they bring with them a strange mix of pleasure and suspicion. The pleasure is undeniable suddenly. You're being touched in ways that ignite your senses. You're experiencing levels of passion that feel fresh and exhilarating. And yet that very freshness feels out of place, as though it doesn't belong to the familiar story you've built together. This paradox, feeling simultaneously aroused and insecure, is something every man must learn to navigate with maturity and reflection. Because if you react too quickly, you risk damaging trust even further, projecting your fears onto her without truly listening to the signals. If you ignore it completely, you might betray yourself, pretending that everything is fine while your instincts quietly scream for your attention. Now let's talk about a fourth signal that often surfaces: a sudden focus on your pleasure, but in ways that seem disconnected from emotional intimacy. Maybe before she sought closeness, cuddling after intimacy, whispering sweet nothings, holding your gaze, but now her energy feels transactional, almost like she's performing, offering you intense pleasure, but without the same emotional glue. This new intensity can leave you feeling both flattered and uneasy. The performance is there, but the warmth feels absent. It's like she's compensating for something unspoken, using passion to distract from emotional distance. And this can be one of the most difficult dynamics to interpret, because it can feel so good physically while raising deep doubts emotionally. Again, pause and ask yourself, has she become more passionate, yet less emotionally available? Does it feel like her focus is on proving something or making up for something rather than sharing genuine desire? That's a clue worth paying attention to, not necessarily as proof of cheating, but as a window into how she's managing her own internal world. The fifth signal is more subtle but deeply telling. When she begins initiating encounters with a frequency or creativity that seems out of step with her past behavior. If she was reserved or hesitant before but now seems newly eager and adventurous, it can feel like a rebirth, or like something she's bringing back from an affair. Frequency matters here, not because passion is suspicious, but because sudden and uncharacteristic eagerness can sometimes be about guilt, an attempt to repair the relationship silently by giving more in the bedroom. But here's the nuance. Sometimes a woman who's exploring her own sexuality genuinely wants to offer more. Maybe she's come into a new phase of self-confidence and desire. Maybe she's read something, watched something, or reflected on her own pleasure and decided to take ownership of her sensuality in a way she never has before. This is why context matters so deeply. You can't just look at the changes in the bedroom and draw conclusions. You have to look at the entire relationship, how connected you feel outside of sex, how safe she feels to express her desires and insecurities, how emotionally intimate your conversations have been. And so much depends on the story you tell yourself about these changes. If you choose to tell yourself that she's cheating, you look for every piece of evidence to confirm that story. If you tell yourself that she's finally opening up and becoming more confident, you'll embrace her new passion as a gift. Neither story may be fully true, but both reflect your state of mind and your trust in the relationship. So what you do in this emotionally charged space, you listen. Not just to her words, but to her actions, her energy, her availability outside the bedroom. You pay attention to the tone of your relationship as a whole, whether she seems more distant in everyday life, even as she becomes more adventurous in the bedroom. And most importantly, you prepare yourself for a conversation, not an accusation, but an exploration. I want you to imagine what it would sound like to talk with her, not from a place of suspicion, but from curiosity and vulnerability. How would you open that conversation? Would you say, "I've noticed that things have shifted between us sexually, and while I'm enjoying it, I also feel a bit off balance. Can we talk about where this new energy is coming from?" This is a much more powerful way to address the issue than saying, "Who taught you that?" or "Are you seeing someone else?" because it invites honesty without shutting her down defensively. At this point in our journey together, I hope you're seeing that what's happening in the bedroom is never just about technique or skills. It's about the story of your connection, the emotional safety you've created or neglected, the trust that holds you together. When changes occur, especially sudden ones, they're invitations for dialogue. And whether these changes mean she's cheating or simply growing, that dialogue will tell you everything you need to know. But we're not done yet. There's more to unpack, more to feel, more to explore. Because beneath all these signs, all these subtle and not so subtle shifts, there's an even deeper question. What's really going on between the two of you that has made these shifts so noticeable and so destabilizing? So now that you've begun to recognize the importance of context, how her sudden bedroom skills may not be isolated but part of a broader emotional landscape, you might find yourself in a new space, a place where curiosity competes with fear, where you're wondering not only what she's doing but why you're feeling this way. And that's a vital shift. Because this isn't just about what's happening to you, but what's happening between you. I want to invite you to slow down even more. Let's go deeper into this sense of disorientation that sudden changes in intimacy can create. You may feel confused. Why would she act this way if she loves me? Why now? What has changed in her or in us? And here is where your capacity to hold two truths at once will serve you, because it's possible for her to love you deeply and still explore new sexual terrain, even while it confuses you. It's possible that what feels suspicious to you may feel liberating for her. And it's also possible that these changes are rooted in guilt or an effort to mask betrayal. This complexity is precisely what makes human relationships so delicate. Nothing is black and white. Every interaction, every shift in sexual energy carries a story, and most of those stories exist in a shade of gray. So let's talk about another subtle clue you may notice: when her desire seems almost detached from emotional connection. In the past, perhaps your intimacy came after a romantic evening, a moment of emotional closeness. But now maybe she's initiating more spontaneously, but without that same relational warmth. It's almost as though the intimacy itself has become a separate performance, a well-crafted show that feels exciting but also emotionally hollow. That detachment matters because true intimacy is about much more than physical pleasure. It's about being seen and known. When a woman begins to express new skills without inviting you into her emotional experience, it can feel alienating. You're participating, but you're not included in the deeper part of her journey. You're being touched, but not necessarily felt. And this brings us to one of the most important aspects of interpreting these changes: the quality of your emotional communication outside the bedroom. If she's bringing new energy to your sex life but seems distant during daily conversations, if she's less inclined to share her feelings, if she seems distracted when you try to connect emotionally, then that contrast itself can be revealing. At this point, some men become hyper-vigilant. They start noticing every small thing: the texts on her phone, the time she spends online, the changes in her routine. And while it's natural to become suspicious when your trust feels shaken, this hyper-vigilance can erode your own peace of mind, pulling you into a constant state of anxiety. Here's a gentle reminder: you cannot police your way into intimacy. You cannot surveil your way into trust. If you feel that things have shifted so much that you can't enjoy being with her anymore without questioning her motives, that itself is a signal, not necessarily that she's cheating, but that your trust has been damaged enough that it needs attention. And what about her own inner life? Sometimes a woman's sudden changes in the bedroom are not about another man at all, but about a shift in her self-perception. Maybe she's feeling more desirable, more confident. Maybe she's been exploring her fantasies privately through reading, watching, or self-reflection. And maybe she's finally bringing that side of herself into your relationship. If that's the case, this could be an opportunity for deeper intimacy if you can meet her openness without suspicion. But I also know sometimes your gut just knows. When the emotional distance is combined with these new behaviors, when her stories feel inconsistent, when her gaze seems to avoid yours at key moments, you may sense that something isn't right. This is where your task as a man is to stay grounded, clear, and calm. Because whether or not she's cheating, the way you respond will define what happens next. If you meet this moment with anger, accusations, or withdrawal, you may deepen the fracture. If you meet it with curiosity, vulnerability, and courage, you create a path, either for reconciliation or for truth. And here's a painful but freeing reality to sit with. Sometimes the new bedroom skills she's showing you are not about a betrayal you can control. Sometimes they're about her need to find herself again, to rediscover pleasure, passion, adventure, and those needs may have grown in a space where the relationship had already begun to feel stagnant. This is why self-reflection is so crucial. Instead of simply asking, where did she learn this? Ask yourself, have I been emotionally present? Have I cultivated a space where she can share her fantasies, her desires, her sexuality with me? Have I encouraged her to feel safe being bold with me? Or did she have to go elsewhere to awaken this part of herself? None of this is easy. In fact, it's one of the most difficult emotional landscapes to navigate. You're dealing with potential betrayal, yes, but also with your own vulnerability, your desire to feel special, chosen, unique, and the pain of feeling replaced, or even potentially replaced, can cut deep. So as we continue this conversation, I want you to practice staying grounded, to resist the urge to leap to conclusions or shut down emotionally, to see these changes not only as potential evidence but as invitations. Invitations to explore what's working between you and what's not. Invitations to understand her evolving sexuality and your own response to it. What's next is going to require that you hold steady, that you recognize the complexity of her new behaviors, not immediately as proof of infidelity, but as a clue about the emotional ecosystem you're both living in. And that you prepare yourself, not just for a confrontation, but for a conversation. Because ultimately, whether this is about infidelity or not, these changes are showing you that something has shifted in her. And when something shifts in her, something must shift in you as well. If you want to meet her where she is now, you're still here, still listening, and that says something important about you. It tells me you're not just looking for a quick answer, a black and white judgment, or a checklist that will confirm or deny your suspicions. You're here because you recognize that relationships are made in the gray areas, in the subtle shifts, in the spaces between what's spoken and what's unsaid. And that is exactly where we need to stay for a while longer. At this stage, as you continue to notice her sudden bedroom confidence, her new techniques, her assertiveness, her boldness, you may begin to ask deeper questions about how you've participated in the creation of this moment. Because when something seems foreign in the relationship, it's often because it's exposing something that was dormant or something that never felt safe enough to surface before. This is where it becomes less about whether she's cheating and more about whether you two have been able to create a space where newness, novelty, and desire can flourish together. If she has found that space elsewhere, it can feel like a devastating betrayal. But if you reflect honestly, you might see that perhaps that space hadn't existed between you for some time. Maybe there were missed conversations, unspoken longings, or mutual complacency. This doesn't make betrayal okay. It simply invites you to recognize that infidelity is rarely just about sex. It's often about desire itself, desire for attention, affirmation, excitement, risk, adventure. If she's cheating, she may not simply be seeking another man. She may be seeking another version of herself. A version that feels alive, desired, vibrant. That's what makes interpreting these new bedroom behaviors so complex. Are they gestures of love, passion, and creativity, or echoes of experiences she's having elsewhere? The truth might even be both at once. It's possible she's exploring a newfound erotic self that was awakened outside the relationship, but is being shared with you now, not because she wants to betray you further, but because she's hungry for connection, even as she struggles with guilt. So how do you meet this? You listen carefully, not just to her words, but to your body's own signals, your unease, your curiosity, your suspicion. They all matter, but they need to be tempered with compassion and courage. You also need to get radically honest with yourself. Have you been avoiding difficult conversations about sex, passion, or intimacy? Have you withdrawn emotionally without realizing it? Have you provided her with opportunities to share her evolving desires with you? Or has your relationship fallen into silent routines? You see, one of the most seductive things about novelty is that it requires nothing from the other person. No history, no baggage, no unspoken resentments. When a woman begins expressing new sexual skills, it's not always about replacing you. Sometimes it's about rediscovering herself in a context free from the weight of daily life arguments or old wounds. That's why the most important work right now is to reclaim your own presence. If you feel distant from her, ask yourself, where am I hiding? Where have I disengaged? What parts of myself have I stopped bringing to this relationship? Because her sudden bedroom transformation is not just about what she's doing, it's also about how you're receiving it. When she touches you in new ways, when she surprises you with her confidence, how do you respond? Do you open yourself up and engage? Or do you pull back, suspicious and cold, quietly interrogating her in your mind rather than connecting with her in the moment? Your response is part of the equation. Your suspicion, while natural, can become a barrier to connection if it goes unspoken or unresolved. And then, of course, there's the deeper truth. If you genuinely believe that her new behaviors are evidence of betrayal, you need to prepare yourself for a real conversation. Not a fight, not an interrogation, but a dialogue where you show up vulnerably and ask her to show up too. But before you even speak with her, I invite you to consider your own attachment to certainty. When we feel insecure, we grasp for certainty. We want facts, confessions, clear answers, but relationships are messy. Sometimes you won't get clarity right away. Sometimes you have to sit with ambiguity for a while, and that's where emotional maturity comes in. Can you tolerate the discomfort of not knowing while still staying emotionally engaged? Can you honor your own instincts without letting them poison your interactions? This is also a moment to reflect on whether you've been investing in your own erotic presence. Because novelty isn't just something that she brings or that you notice. It's something you can co-create. Have you been curious about her inner world? Have you made her feel desired and special? Or have you taken her for granted, assuming that she would stay the same, while your connection drifted into autopilot? All of this matters, because even if she's not cheating, if you felt disconnected or insecure for some time, this is your opportunity to repair, not just to catch her, but to deepen your understanding of what's alive between you and what's missing. And if you do discover that she's been unfaithful, you'll want to be able to look back and know that you met this moment with grace, care and integrity, that you didn't simply accuse and punish, but that you opened a space for real conversation about desire, trust, and the future of your relationship. This is the power of staying present even in the face of uncertainty. It allows you to stay grounded in your dignity as a man, to honor your feelings without being ruled by them, and to lead your relationship with honesty rather than fear. So as you sit with these questions, as you observe her new bedroom skills and try to make sense of them, I invite you to do one thing above all: stay connected. Stay connected to your own emotions, your own instincts, your own values. And when you're ready, stay connected to her as well. Because intimacy is never just about knowing where someone learned a new technique or skill. It's about being willing to ask, where are we right now? Where have we drifted? And are we both willing to come back to each other? By now, you may feel your mind full of questions, your heart heavy with conflicting emotions. You've been listening closely, not only to the shifts in her behavior, but to the quiet signals inside yourself. You've explored what her sudden bedroom confidence might mean. You've examined how trust and desire intertwine, and you've reflected on the possibility that her newfound skills could come from her own personal growth or from an intimacy that belongs to someone else. But I want to leave you with something deeper than suspicion or doubt, because this isn't just about her. It's about you. About your ability to stand strong in the face of uncertainty, about your willingness to turn toward difficult truths and toward your partner, not with panic but with presence. So what happens now? What do you actually do when you feel that shift? When the woman you thought you knew so well surprises you with boldness, confidence, and skills that seem to come from another world, you begin with honesty. Not just honesty with her, but honesty with yourself. How have you been feeling in this relationship? Has your trust already been eroding for some time? Or is this shift in her bedroom behavior the first crack in a relationship that felt solid and safe? And then you lean into curiosity, not accusation. When you're ready to talk, you don't interrogate, you invite. You might say something like, I'm noticing a new energy between us, especially in how you've been expressing yourself physically. It's exciting, and honestly, it's left me feeling a little unsteady. I'd like to understand more about what's going on for you. Notice how different that feels from suspicion or control. You're inviting her into dialogue, not demanding a confession. You're showing that you're paying attention. Not that you're policing her, but that you're attuned to the connection between you. This openness creates space for truth. And truth is what you ultimately need. Whether that truth reveals that she's simply stepping into a more liberated version of herself, or that her newfound freedom has indeed come from another man's attention, another man's touch. And here's something important to remember: even if you discover betrayal, even if she's been with someone else, that doesn't necessarily mean the relationship is over. For some couples, infidelity is the beginning of a new conversation about trust, desire, and commitment. For others, it's a line that cannot be crossed without ending the relationship. But whichever path your truth takes you down, you will want to know that you met this moment as your best self, not reactive, not defensive, but grounded in clarity and dignity. You see, most people think intimacy is about knowing everything about your partner, but the real work of intimacy is about knowing yourself and being willing to show up vulnerably, even when you don't have all the answers. Especially when you don't have all the answers. This is why sudden changes in the bedroom can be so destabilizing. They challenge your sense of certainty. They remind you that your partner is not an extension of you, that she's a separate being with her own evolving desires, her own hidden stories, her own capacity for change. And this unpredictability, as uncomfortable as it is also where the greatest opportunities for growth lie, because it invites you to recognize that relationships aren't static, that desire ebbs and flows, that passion needs tending, that trust must be nurtured not just by fidelity, but by emotional openness and curiosity. So rather than seeing her sudden bedroom skills only as a threat, I want you to ask, how can I meet her here? How can I bring my own curiosity, creativity, and courage to this moment? How can I show up fully even when I'm unsure? And this is where something beautiful can happen, because even if you discover that these new skills came from betrayal, even if you decide that trust has been broken beyond repair, you will still walk away with the clarity that you showed up with honesty and presence, that you were willing to have the hard conversation, willing to feel your emotions, willing to honor your dignity. But if these new skills are part of her own awakening, a journey she's chosen to share with you, you now have an opportunity to step into that space with her, to co-create a richer, more adventurous intimacy together. Remember, desire thrives in novelty, but novelty doesn't have to mean infidelity. It can mean rediscovering each other in new ways, taking risks together, bringing playfulness and curiosity back into your shared space. And in the end, that's really what this is about: cultivating a relationship where both of you feel free to explore, to evolve, to express your deepest desires without fear of judgment or rejection. So here's my final message to you. When she surprises you, when she challenges your expectations, when she brings something new and unfamiliar to the bedroom, don't immediately ask, where did she learn this? Instead, ask, what can I learn from this moment? What is this teaching me about myself, about her, about us? And remember, your task is not to control her evolution. Your task is to meet it with strength, with openness, with dignity, and with the courage to ask for truth without losing yourself in suspicion. As you move forward, I hope you'll bring this level of reflection to all your relationships, not just romantic ones, but every bond that matters to you, because the ability to hold space for curiosity, honesty, and vulnerability is what makes you not just a lover, but a deeply relational, emotionally attuned man. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I invite you to share your thoughts and your experiences in the comments below, because your reflections matter. Your honesty, your questions, your vulnerability, they help others feel less alone in their own journeys. If you found this conversation meaningful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Intimacy Lab for more insights about love, relationships, trust, and desire. We are building a community of men and women who want to love better, live deeper, and connect more authentically. Here's to your growth, your courage, and your ability to meet the complexities of love with grace.